Start spreading.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
It just might be the greatest sports franchise in the history of sports. A place where legends are made, and there's always something to talk about. Get ready to immerse yourself in pinstripes. Start spreading the news, hosted by Paul Semendinger and E.J. Fagan, a couple of doctors with a prescription for Yankee fever. And now, here's Dr. Paul Semendinger and Dr. E.J. Fagan. Get ready to start spreading the news.
Hey, EJ, welcome to Monday. It's the eve of All Hallows Eve. It's Halloween before, what would you call the day before Halloween? Halloween Eve, like Christmas Eve?
I mean, we used to call it Cabbage Night back in Jersey, but you know.
We called it Goosey Night. It's interesting that depending on the towns,
everybody's got a different name for it. Yeah, it never made sense to me. The day before you trash someone's house and then you ask them for candy, it should be the opposite, right? If the candy sucks, then you go to the house. But never really made sense in New Jersey. I didn't participate in those activities. But it's wonderful. You know, my wife's a big Halloween fan, so we're all decorated for Halloween. We got the 12-foot skeleton. We got all that ready to go. So I'm excited. I got lots of candy, and I think I'm supposed to be dressing up. I'll wear whatever costume I'm given.
All right, I got to ask you something, EJ, because this has come up in a lot of conversations. I do not have the 12-foot skeleton. It seems like it's all the rage this year. Especially.
It's all the rage. It was wonderful. Yeah.
So does the 12-foot skeleton come in pieces and you have to put it together?
It comes in like, I'm going to say 12 pieces. So you got like a torso, you have like a hip, you have upper and lower arms and legs, a head. And it's a pain. It's a little bit of a pain to put together. It's not that difficult to put together, but it just because it's so big, like you have to like rest it on a sawhorse at an angle just to get it together. Yeah, it's a thing, but we have it. It's staked down. It hasn't fallen over. My wife tried to attach some things to it and didn't really support all that, so I wouldn't do that. It's not all that sturdy, but it looks pretty cool, and it's 12 feet tall. It's huge. It's massive.
And where will this be stored?
That's a great question.
All right. Well, once we know the answer to that, maybe you can tell us next week. So it is Halloween. It is the night before Halloween, and it is Goosey Night. That's what we called it in Midland Park, New Jersey. I don't know I think a lot of people call it Goosey Night. We get some Cabbage Night.
Ramsey, New Jersey was a Cabbage Night town. All
right. Ramsey, New Jersey and Midland Park are basically next door neighbors. There's like a town between us, but you just don't know. So EJ, thinking about baseball and trick or treating or tricks, or the other part of Halloween is the scary part. It's dressing up or being scary. As you think about the history of baseball that you've witnessed, what was either the trickiest play you ever saw, the scariest moment, or something that you can relate to Halloween?
Well, I got to talk about the hidden ball trick, which is one of my favorite plays to watch in baseball because, one, it gets attempted 10 times a game, right? All the time, players are kind of doing their little like, oh, do I have the ball? Do I not have the ball? And almost nobody ever falls for it. But occasionally you have players who can pull out the hidden ball trick. And Mike Lowell was one of the best. I think he had 2 hidden ball tricks. And there was a hidden ball trick. I brought it up here from 8 years ago. So this is from 2005. I think I'm looking at his first hidden ball trick right here. And he's just very good at kind of selling that he's, throwing the ball away and nothing's happening, just kind of sauntering over to the runner and bam, right? Lays the tag on. So I'm a big hidden ball trick fan. I've never witnessed one in person. I'd love to see it. But I don't think I can't remember the last Yankee hidden ball trick either. I feel like Anthony Rizzo has one in him sometime during his career.
Gene Michael, before he was the great GM, was a shortstop. He played on the shortstop. I think he came up with the Dodgers, played for the Yankees, obviously, throughout the Horace Clarke era. And he was then replaced by Fred Chicken Stanley, who was then replaced by Bucky Dent. Now you're into the Yankee pennant-winning teams. Anyway, they always said that Gene Michael was a master at the hidden ball trick. So I've never seen footage of that, but they always say he was a master of the hidden ball trick. I asked this question of the writers for Start Spreading the News, and one of them, Ed Body, shared a moment that I never saw. It was from a World Series in the early 70s, Reds against the A's. And the Reds had a guy on first. Johnny Bench was up. The guy on first stole second. So now Johnny Bench, the great Johnny Bench, is up, and the runner is in scoring position, and first base is open. And there's like a 2-strike count or whatever. I'm not sure how many balls, but the manager goes out, and the catcher goes out, and they're standing on the mound, and the manager's pointing and this and that and the other thing, and they're pointing at first base, and they all nod, and the catcher goes back. It's Gene Tennis. And instead of getting into his crouch, he puts his arm out like this, like it's going to be a pitch out. And as Raleigh Fingers, the pitcher, gets ready, Tennis gets into the catcher's crouch. He throws a slider, bam, catches the outside corner, and Johnny Bench is like, what? and they struck him out on they were pretending to be an intentional walk. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, it's great. That's a move, back when intentional walks were a thing. I was always shocked it didn't happen more often, right? Give him one fake ball and then bam, throw one right down the middle. I think the trick pitch is always a fun one. It pains me that the eephus pitch is mostly gone from baseball, because it was one of the best things to watch, like an El Duque or a Zach Greinke. Trying to think of a couple of other eephus pitch throwers.
Back when I was growing up in the early 80s, the Yankees had a left-hander named Dave LaRoche, and he threw a pitch that he called La Lob.
Yeah, and he taught La Lob to somebody. Who did he teach La Lob to?
I
Dave
don't
LaRoche,
know.
Hold on, La Lob. I remember exactly this story. Who did he teach La Lob to?
While you're looking that up, in the previous era, the Yankees had another lefty out of the bullpen named Steve Hamilton, and he threw the Folly Floater. It was also an eephus pitch. And there was a guy named Rip Sewell, I believe. Now I'm really testing my deep baseball knowledge, but Rip Sewell threw an eephus pitch, and I believe he threw it to Ted Williams, maybe in like the 1946 All-Star game, and Ted Williams hit the pitch out. And there's footage of that with Ted Williams clapping his hands and laughing as he circles the bases after hitting a lob ball out. But did you find out who Dave LaRoche
was? No, but I just recently saw like one of those YouTube documentary things with talking about the lob, and I forget, God, I can't remember who he taught it to. But yeah, I love that stuff, right? To me, that is, I think when Tim Wakefield died a few weeks ago, which is something we didn't talk about, but which was just such a massive surprise and really horrible. My question when I watched that was like, am I ever going to see another real knuckleballer in the majors? And I think it's similar with the eephus pitch, right? I mean, this is a pitch that there's a reason why it's not used all that often, but every once in a while, someone can pull it off.
I can tell you a pitcher who throws one sometimes.
Who? Well, there you go. I bet like the Zach Greinke is the last, I think, right now, real eephus pitcher in the majors, and it's something I'm going to miss, and it's something that you just wonder if it's gone for a while. It feels like the fewer people that throw it, the more of the incentive is for one person to throw it, because no one's seen it. I'm sure pitchers in college or whatever have thrown eephus pitches before. But, in this world of high velocity, if somebody who normally throws 98 can throw a 60-mile-an-hour lob in, I feel like that's got to matter pretty well. I also just feel like the knuckleball, we're in a situation where no one's seen a good knuckleball, period. Right? No one playing today has played against, I think Charlie Hager or I guess R.A. Dickey was around that same time. Those are the last guys to really throw much of a knuckleball. Tim Wakefield is now ancient history, and unfortunately he's passed away. And so I don't know I don't know who throws it. And my problem is that the knuckleball was always passed down from pitcher to pitcher. And I mean, Tim Wakefield would have been one of the guys coaching the next major league knuckleballer.
Yeah, they had a fraternity like Tim Wakefield. When he had trouble and he would get into a slump, he'd reach out to Phil Negro and say, like, what am I doing wrong? That was a
and then Wakefield taught Dickey, right? I mean, so Dickey, I guess, is the guy. Right? R.A. Dickey's got to be the guy to go find a knuckleballer. Let's do it. Like it shocks me that more pitchers who are kind of in the minors, like some of these guys and had failing careers, don't go for it. I think it's just because like catchers don't want to bother, like they don't want to have to deal with it. But it's a reason why Wakefield and Dickey and Necro and a lot of guys had really long, productive careers. I get that now maybe it's easier for most pitchers to, instead of throwing a knuckleball, to go to driveline baseball and iron out their mechanics or whatever. But I can't imagine that there's not value in, this bringing back a Wakefield type. And I think it'd be more effective because nobody's seen it. Now it's also hard to catch, but I feel like there are catchers that no one ever really caught it well anyway. So it's not like it's not like, being able to catch a knuckleball is part of the requirement to actually do it.
You remember, Bob Uecker's quote about catching the knuckleball?
No.
Bob Uecker said it's simple to catch the knuckleball. You wait till it hits the screen behind you and you go over and pick it up.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, Wakefield's knuckleball. I mean, Dickey, I think Dickey's knuckleball was less impressive than Wakefield's knuckleball because Dickey actually had some velocity. And so it moved and it was hard to catch, but it wasn't this kind of soft floater the way that, just watching Tim Wakefield on camera was incredible. Just one of my favorite. Even though he was a Red Sox, just one of my favorite pitchers to watch. The Yankees, after a while, some of the Yankees kind of figured it out. Like A-Rod by the end of Wakefield's career could hit him pretty well. But it's one of those varieties of baseball that I think is really special and I really enjoy it.
I'll tell you 2 famous knuckleballs that in Yankee history, as I'm thinking about it. I'll tell you 3. Hoyt Wilhelm once threw a no-hitter. He was a knuckleball pitcher against the Yankees. That was probably in the 1950s. But in October of 1977, when Reggie hit those 3 home runs, the third pitcher who came in to face him, he had each off a different pitcher. The third pitcher who came in was Charlie Huff. And Charlie Huff was a knuckleball pitcher. And when Reggie saw him coming in, he said, "Oh, baby." Because a lot of sluggers don't hit the knuckleball well, but Reggie did. Darryl Strawberry also did. Darryl Strawberry was always known, like, if there was a knuckleballer, he was going to go deep. But, of course, the other famous knuckleball thrown that led to a Yankee home run was Wakefield. And that was the home run that Aaron Boone hit.
So I have another piece of information. We officially have another Major League knuckleballer.
Oh.
The Padres called up late last season. Looks like for 41 innings, Matt Waldron, who I've never heard of before right now. His minor league numbers are okay, not great. He had a 4.35 ERA with the knuckleball. And I'm trying to now look for more information on this guy because I want to know how good he is. Because I think we got another one. We got a new knuckleballer in the majors.
All right, so if the Padres put him in the deal for Juan Soto, the supposed deal, the hopeful deal, that would be a great thing. Then the Yankees would have a knuckleballer.
I'll take him, right? I'll take Matt Waldron right there. I will say his AAA numbers are pretty awful. I wonder if that's the robo strike zone that umpires were giving him a little more leeway because he's a knuckleballer, but the robo strike zone was saying you're basically never over the plate. So batters were probably just sitting on the knuckleball, just waiting, just not swinging at all.
Angelo has a great question. Do you think the knuckleball would be a detriment today because they're focusing so much on running?
I think it would be much harder, right? I mean, you can get it. Tim Wakefield was a guy who can control the running game, and he did by throwing over a lot, by varying his timing. So yeah, I think people would they run all over him. Absolutely. I still kind of want to see it. Look, Tim Wakefield got run on a lot and he was still fine. But yeah, I think that's absolutely yeah. I'm looking at a video of the knuckleball right now. Oh man, he's got a good one. Okay. It's a floater. It's a floater. Okay. Future topic. I'm going to have to do some more research on Matt Waldron.
This is great.
I'm
all right.
excited.
And I want him on the Yankees. That's just the way it is. Yankees need to do some things.
I'll take Juan Soto instead. But.
Well, I want him in the Juan Soto trade. So listen, I'm going to make a big point here. You may or may agree, may or may not agree. You may disagree. The Yankees are in trouble currently as they stand right now for 2024. It's not a good team, and it doesn't look like it'll be a good team. But they do have the opportunity this winter to make some huge trades or signings to really make them all of a sudden a powerhouse. And I think it really all begins with Soto and Yamamoto. They need another starting pitcher. We touched upon that last week. Yamamoto slots in as the number 2. It pushes everybody down a slot. Now Rodon's a 3 instead of a 2. Cortez is a 4 instead of a 3. Mike King is a 5 instead of a 4. And Clark Schmidt's not in your rotation because he's a 5 and fly guy. He did very well for what he did. He gave the Yankees a lot of starts, but I think if you're counting on him to be your number 5 starter, it's a weaker staff. So, and I think without Soto, the Yankee offense is in trouble. He is an on-base machine, leads the all active players in on-base percentage, and it's not by a little, it's by a lot. It's by 9 full points over Mike Trout. And the next guy on the list is Joey Votto, who's 37. So, I mean, this guy is young. He's an on-base machine. So I believe that if the Yankees get both of those guys, all of a sudden the team looks a heck of a lot better, a whole lot better. And you know what? They could contend for a pennant. There's no doubt, especially since so many teams make it. But if they don't get those 2 guys, I don't believe there are any other 2 guys they could put onto this team that would vastly improve the pitching staff and vastly improve the lineup. And without both of them, 2024 will be a disaster. Am I overstating it?
I think there's a little more creativity possible here. I think your general point that the current Yankees roster is in bad shape and needs at least 3 position players to be competitive. You need someone to play center field until Dominguez gets back. And frankly, Dominguez only has a week of games. And so, I think he probably has a spot when he's healthy, but I don't know if you want to be relying on him to be a real producer just yet. He's still very young. Again, only still has a limited amount of time, even if he looked great during that amount of time. You need a third baseman. LeMahieu might be able to kind of hold down that spot, but honestly, I'm not sure you want him to be your starting third baseman. Maybe your guy, maybe has a guy who plays sometime over there. And then you need a left fielder. There's some other positions you might want to try to upgrade at, but those are the absolute requirements. There is currently Jake Bowers is your current left fielder. DJ LeMahieu is your current third baseman. I don't even know who's your current center fielder. I'm just let me look at the MLB.
Right now, it's got to be Estevan Florial.
Yeah, Estevan Florial is on the depth chart right now, right? So clearly there is a need to add some players for this.
Let me stop right now for a minute, because Estevan Florial has been so forgotten and so overlooked for so long that if I'm Estevan Florial, I take a screenshot of that page you're looking at where he's number 1 on the depth chart, because it's never going to happen. When the time the season comes, it can't be him. It won't be him. So just, you take a picture of that screenshot, you send it to your family, you get it printed somehow on really fancy paper, you put it in a frame, and you say, there was a moment in time when I was the number 1 guy for the Yankees in center field. Anyway, keep going.
So they have to add players. Now, is it possible to improve this team a lot, let's say by 10 wins, without adding either Juan Soto or Yamamoto? I think so. And I think it's actually not that difficult. We're going to talk about
a special player,
Young Ho Lee from Korea, who I think is a one option. But even if we don't think about him, you could imagine, for example, Heimer Candelario, who was I'm just looking at the number here, was a 3+ win player last year, holding down third base, really good defensive third baseman, had a really strong offensive season last year. He's a switch hitter. He's a player who you could imagine being a part of that. You could imagine Cody Bellinger being a part of that. Both of these players I'm not crazy about signing, frankly. I have my reservations about how expensive Bellinger is going to be, but Cody Bellinger has a Yankee Stadium swing. He's a good defensive center fielder. He's a left-handed hitter. He's been injured, but he's coming off a really strong year. He's still only going to be 28 years old. So, again, I think I'd rather the other 2 guys, but I think that there are lots of different ways this team could improve. For me, the thing is that, and this is what I wrote when I wrote about Yamamoto, is other than Yamamoto, I'm not sure I want to sign a big name pitcher. Like, I don't want to go sign Blake Snell. Mm-mm. I don't want to sign Sonny Gray. I don't want to sign, there's
Jordan Montgomery.
Just because they're all too old. And I don't want another player in the same age range as a lot of the current Yankee highly paid players. And so, like, if you're not signing Yamamoto, I would rather spend every dime on signing hitters. I think there's a world where the Yankee pitching staff, if you don't do anything about it, it's actually kind of good next year. There's a world where it's really bad next year where
I'm in that world.
Well, I mean, Cortez and Rodon are your big question marks. If
And
those
King
guys
and Schmidt.
well, Schmidt, I mean, Schmidt is only a question mark if you have high expectations, right? I mean, if he's your 5 starter, you're like, okay, he's fine. He's a fine 5 starter.
Yes.
He's better than most teams' 5 starters.
Maybe. I don't know. They won't
Mike
give
King,
him 3 times through the order. Like,
well, most major league rotations don't have guys who go 3 times through the order all the time.
I understand,
right?
but you're saying if we have high expectations, we're the Yankees, right? Well, we
Well,
are.
if you're relying on Schmidt to be your number 3 guy, you're in trouble. If you're relying on him to start a playoff game, you're in trouble. But if he is the 5th best starter on your roster, I think you're probably fine. The thing is that requires Cole, Rodon, King, and Cortez, to be really good.
I agree. That's why they need Yamamoto.
Well, I mean, that's
everybody
why
else down,
right? Which is, but my point is that if you let's say Yamamoto is just dead set on signing in the West Coast, which is a possibility, I think in that case, I think that I go and say, I want to spend every dime I can on the rotation. Maybe you find like a depth guy, but that's it, right? You don't spend really any significant amount of money on a starter. Maybe you get a reliever. There's ways to make the pitching a little bit better. I think the Yankee depth starting pitching isn't bad next year. If Johnny Brito is starting at AAA, I think Brito and Vasquez, had some good signs by the end of the year that they could be effective major league starters. And again, that's your 6th and 7th starter. You got guys like Will Warren down there. You have Drew Thorpe kind of knocking on the door. So I'm okay with that depth. I'm not really sure I need to sign. I don't even know who the example would be, a Rich Hill, to kind of fill out the rotation. I know I need a third baseman. I know I need a left fielder. I know I need a center fielder. And Angela mentions that like Rizzo,
big question.
You don't know if you have. Well, I'll quote my conversation with my mom on the Bronx Beat podcast, who's a psychologist, knows a lot about concussions. Rizzo is probably going to be fine. There's no it would be very rare for Anthony Rizzo to have symptoms going into next season. And so I think we're going to get a good enough Rizzo. Again, Rizzo is not a 5-win player at his best these days, but he could be a 3-win player. And I think a big upgrade over what we had last year. But you still just need those other players. You need some lefty hitters. You need some good hitters. I think question marks around Austin Wells, Anthony Volpe, Oswald Peraza, and Giancarlo Stanton. Those are all question marks we have to resolve. And I think that Juan Soto goes a long way toward fixing that. And that's why I think he makes a lot of sense on the team. And even if you trade some of those guys I mentioned to get him, I think it makes sense. It sounds like Wells is going to be the catcher. We've heard some rumors the Yankees are looking to move Higashioka, that Ben Rortved's going to start in the minors. I think Rortvedt as a depth catcher is fine. And I think that Wells looked fine enough during his debut that I think you can kind of cross your fingers on the bat, and Trevino's going to be back and hopefully healthy. And I think that should be okay.
Yeah, it's mediocre at best, but that's what it is, unless Wells becomes great. But there is a wild card, and you hinted at it a moment ago. Young Ho Lee, left-handed hitter, playing in Korea. Tell me about him.
Sure. So Young Ho Lee is a career 340 hitter in Korea. He is widely considered the best hitter, position player in the Korean baseball organization, the KBO, at the moment. He plays center field. He is fast. He's won a bunch of gold gloves. He is about to be 25 years old. So I think he turns 25. He just turned 25 years old in August. Extremely high contact skills. I've been watching video of him today. He's got like a swing, not quite like an Ichiro contact swing.
I was going to ask
but
you,
like
is he
kind of like not exactly. It's
345?
not Ichiro swing, but he's got a swing that looks a lot like a hitter.
Fast. You sounds like Ichiro. Fast.
He's fast. He doesn't steal a lot of bases. Doesn't have quite the arm of Ichiro, but he's a center fielder. Looks great in center field. I've seen some tape of him in the outfield. I mean, he looks He looks like a major league center fielder. He looks like a guy who's going to hit for contact, and he looks like a guy who's not going to hit a lot of home runs.
Yankees need a leadoff hitter.
He looks like a leadoff hitter to me. He looks a lot like Luis Arias, and Luis Arias, is obviously he's had one of the best seasons ever, of his career. Maybe the best season he'll ever have. He hit like 350. But similar kind of player. He hit I think 10 home runs last year, but was still really valuable. I think the elephant in the room is that no Korean baseball organization hitter has ever, who started in the KBO, has ever transitioned to the majors successfully. Some players have come over from Korea who were younger. So like Shin-Soo Choo came over as a high schooler. Mickey Rivers too. Yeah, I can see that. Like he's not as fast as Rivers.
Okay, Mickey never walked. This was Mickey would probably be. I love Mickey Rivers, but I think he'd be less successful today because when he was playing, they didn't care about walks. Mickey hit 333 the one year, whatever, 337. He was on base a lot, but his walk totals were not great. So in today's day and age, I don't think you'd see him as a leadoff hitter. They'd say he doesn't get on base enough.
Yeah, probably not. But also, I mean, the run scoring environment was so low at the time. He walks more than Rivers, but he doesn't walk. He's not going to walk 100 times a year. But he's, the hope is that in the majors he could hit 300 easily. And right. I think that's a look that the Yankees could want. I also think that maybe his left-handed swing works in Yankee Stadium.
So you're an agent. Or you're the GM, and the agents come to you. The agent for Lee comes to you, and the agent for Bellinger comes to you, and they each say, I don't know, 5 years, $60 million. It's probably going to be a little more than that. 5 years, $100 million, right? $20 million a year. You can have either of them. You go to Hal Steinbrenner. He goes, I'm not buying both. You get one or the other.
The question is Yamamoto or
no Bellinger.
Oh, Bellinger. I'm Bellinger, saying... 100%. Oh, yeah. I mean, look, Bellinger is a proven commodity in the major leagues.
Oh man, I'd go the opposite.
Lee is not getting that kind of money. But I don't think Lee's. I think Lee is getting like Yoshida's contract, which was 5 years, $90 million.
5 years, $90 million. So it's 15 a year.
Yeah.
All right. So to me, that's a no-brainer.
I mean, I think maybe some team wants to pay him more, but I think that makes a lot of sense. He's 25 years old. It's a chance to get a player in their prime. This is not Yamamoto. Yamamoto is as close to a certainty as you get. There's a model for Japanese starting pitchers coming over and dominating in the major leagues.
Yeah,
and that model is basically throw a splitter. He throws a splitter. It's a great splitter. It's a killer splitter if you watch it. I mean, you wonder how people ever hit it. He's got great control. He's got velocity. He's a little short, but besides that, I mean, he looks like the successful Japanese pitcher. And now we've seen 7 or 8 of those really high-end pitchers come over to the majors and play really well. Mm-hmm. Some of them had arm injuries eventually, like Daisuke Matsuzaka ran into some arm injuries as going from a 6-day to a 5-day rotation. But regardless, I mean, like, I think 30 teams in Major League Baseball would pay him $150 million, right? Like he's going to get paid. He's going to be worth it. I think there's a open question of whether or not Lee can hit in the majors. He hit 7 home runs in 86 games last year. He had a 23 home run season in 142 games in 2022. That was his age 23 season. But the season before that, he hit 7 in 123. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of power. And there's not a lot of Major League Baseball players who are successful that way. And he's playing against a much lower level of competition than in the Japanese leagues. The NPB is a much better league than the KBO. A lot of Major League Baseball players go to the KBO and they hit like 50 home runs. I mean, they're incredible. Jung Ho Lee's hit 360 in the KBO, which is something, right? That tells you that he's very talented. But I think there's an open question of whether or not Major League Baseball players strike him out a lot more. And that's
if he's a contact hitter. We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. I am of the belief that before you get into this launch angle and all that kind of nonsense, exit velocity, blah, 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 you have to be able to hit. And in the olden days, and you disagree with me to a point on this, but in the olden days, the first order of business was you have to be able to hit 300. I mean, that was the goal. That's what everybody said. Like, I want to hit 300. And the idea was they knew how to hit. They knew how to put the bat on the ball. And the rest of the stuff came later, the power, the extra bases, and all that kind of stuff. Now, some guys, Ted Williams and Babe Ruth, maybe it just came always. But for the most part, you wanted to hit 300. You wanted to be able to put the bat on the ball. If this guy knows how to do that well, I would think that he can do it. Why wouldn't he be able to?
The Fangraphs scouting report gives him a 60 hit tool, which suggests that he could hit above 300. My problem is that he has to. Right? If this guy hits 290, he's not an effective major league player. At least he's not very good. Maybe he's the kind of guy who, if he was a right-handed hitter, he could make a career off the wall in Fenway, something like that. And maybe he can make a career off the short porch in Yankee Stadium. I think this is a scouting question, right? Like, I think that someone who's a professional scout is going to have to say, I think this guy can hit in the majors. I think his shtick doesn't work in the majors. The KBO is, again, we're talking very low level of competition. I mean, this isn't even as high as like the Cuban leagues were a few years ago when guys like Gurriel were there still. So I don't know. Like, I look at some of the Major League Baseball players who went over the KBO and they're like dominant. So I don't know. I think some team's going to give him a shot. I think if I'm the Yankees, you have a shot to get a 25-year-old star player. You need a center fielder. I don't see why not. I think this is a risk worth taking, assuming that some scout comes out and says, like, no, I think he can actually hit. He's got a weird swing. So
assuming he can hit, the scout comes to you. He says, EJ, absolutely, this guy's going to hit. He might not hit 350. He's not going to. Nobody hits 350, but he's going to hit 300. And maybe after a couple of major league years, we even get him up to 320 because he's figured it out and he's 27. But right now in 2024 and 2025, we think the learning curve will be steep, but he's not going to hit below 290. Probably not going to hit above 310, but he'll hit 300. We're pretty certain. You're talking a couple of hits over the course of a year. It's the difference there. So he wants to sign with the Yankees. And they want your best offer. What's your best offer for this?
I think that Yoshida contract is pretty fair. So Yoshida has 5 years, $90 million. I don't see any reason to believe that would go up that much this year. That seems like a fair contract. Yoshida's Japanese, obviously, so different situation. But both Yoshida and Seiya Suzuki had, I think, pretty good models for what you might expect out of a successful season from Lee. So they both had an OPS around 800. They both had slightly lower batting averages than you would expect, but a little bit more power. So it looks like Yoshida hit 15 home runs last year, and really was designed well for that ballpark. But he was also just as dominant, if not more dominant, in a better league in Japan. So I wouldn't be shocked if if Lee gets less than $90 million. I don't imagine him getting more. To me, that's this is like a high risk, high reward kind of pick. And I think that the Yankees are in a position to do that right now.
I do too. I think the Yankees, they have to say, this is our winter. It's the winter of discontent, to quote a Steinbeck book, right? If the Yankees do nothing this winter, the pitchforks and the mobs are coming out like, what are you doing? You're killing us. So speaking of pitchforks and mobs and all that, the Yankees, we just talked about how they need some pitching, or at least they would behoove them to get another starter. What do you do with Domingo Germán?
I mean, you don't have to offer him a contract. I don't think anyone's trading for him. You have to tender him. He's a relatively cheap tender. I think it's like $5 million. I think Domingo Germán is not worth the risk. I hate to say, like, if he were better, you tolerate his kind of off-field stuff. But I don't think that's even a conversation right now, because I think he's a 5-starter. I think that he's Clark Schmidt, maybe with a little bit more length. One of the things you always liked about Germán is he could go deep into games, but he gets hit, and I don't think he'll ever have an ERA below 4. So I think you just non-tender him.
And, there's noise right? Without getting into it all, right? There's noise around him. He's had a couple of ugly situations, and at some point, you wear out your welcome, right? Maybe he needs a new scenery, maybe he needs a different environment or whatever. But I think the last thing the Yankees need in 2024 is other distractions or the potential for that,
Yeah,
right?
you gotta wonder what's going on in that clubhouse, right? I mean, Josh Donaldson having all sorts of problems. Aroldis Chapman a year earlier. Domingo Herman here. I think getting rid of the bad apples is probably not a bad idea.
I read a great book, and I forget what it was called. I think it was The Last Out of the Yankee Dynasty. I believe that was the book by Buster Olney, which he was prescient, right? Is that how you pronounce it? Because the Yankees were still making the playoffs a lot I believe when he wrote it, but he was basically saying the great era is over, and he was right. They'd lost in a lot of playoffs, and I'm not sure the exact date of the book.
I'm looking to see if I have it right over here.
I have it, but it's across the room. I'd have to leave the screen to get it. It's a great book.
Yeah, I don't have it over here. I have a couple of different Yankee books, but
all right. Maybe when you start talking, I'll go get it, but it's really irrelevant. I think it was written around 2006. But he makes the point that before the Yankees got good, there were a lot of bad apples. Guys like Mel Hall, who was merciless in picking on Bernie Williams and making Bernie uncomfortable. And there was just a lot of those guys. And really, in addition to making great acquisitions in the Buck Showalter, Gene Michael, early 1990s era, what they also did was they got the bad players, the bad people off the team. The guys who were the distractions went away, and they brought in high character guys. And I think the Yankees are in need of that as well. And you know, I think you bring in superstars like Yamamoto and Soto. You bring in guys you can take a chance on like Lee. But if there's a guy who's, especially if he's a fringe guy, but even if he was great, if there's a guy who's a distraction, I think the Yankees need to say, yeah, no, we can't afford that. Let me just, one more point. There was a point when the Yankees in the late 90s, Joe Torre felt like he could put anybody on the roster and they would just fit in. And there was Albert Bell, who had a interesting enough history with attitude and plays on the field and things like that. And Joe Torre's like, I'd bring him in here. He'd be great. I think Joe Torre was even at that point with a great clubhouse overestimating how much they could tolerate a player who was a distraction. And so I don't think
let me just make a point though there for Herman. And again, this is presuming significant change behind the scenes that we're not witness to. Darryl Strawberry was on that team too.
But he had changed by then.
Right. But what I'm saying is for all I know, Herman, CC Sabathia, for instance, goes to rehab and it really changes his life in a lot of ways.
Correct. But CC was never a bad influence. Even when
he was a great influence. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even when he was having his own personal struggles, he didn't distract from winning.
I agree. I'm saying like, I could imagine a world where Herman comes out of this better and whatever.
And we hope for that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And also, Strawberry had to leave New York for a little bit for all that to happen. So I think it's a tough question to answer. I do think though, if I just look at the list of players who are still around, the veterans on the team, LeMahieu, Judge, Rizzo, Jose Trevino, Garrett Cole, even like Rodon, Canely, like these guys seem like stand-up guys. So
I'll hold my impression of Rodon. He did a couple of obnoxious things this year.
Rodon strikes me as more of a bulldog, but not a guy who directed it to other people, but who knows behind the scenes, right? So like I feel like when you have you hope the Yankees are still building an up and coming young team with Volpe and Dominguez and all and at least some of these guys end up being long-term players for the team. And so this is the time to shape them that way, shape the culture of the clubhouse. I feel like we're on the way to that. That said, I think winning makes a lot of this all better. So I know Juan Soto doesn't have the best reputation in the world as being a clubhouse guy. I don't think he's ever been thought of as a distraction, but kind of a guy who's got a little bit of a blasé attitude. He was very young, right? He was kind of young and precocious. And the Padres were not the best environment this year. And I don't know how much of a role he played in that. I know Tatis was someone who played a role in that. I know that the coaching staff played a role in that. So, I think I think we put too much weight on these kind of chemistry issues, and we'll all kind of write the story when the team wins.
No, that history's written after the fact. So, and a lot of times we make the story fit the narrative that we want it to fit. But that's a great point. So we have a little bit of time left here. I think it's a good time. We spend a lot of time talking about what's wrong with the Yankees and all that kind of stuff. I spent a little time on my Dr. Sem show the other day trying to answer this question. What is it about baseball that you love? What makes you love baseball?
It's a good question. Because I'm also a big hockey fan. They're very different sports. I mean, I nothing gets me yelling and screaming at my TV like hockey, and it's a different emotional experience. I got two things I really like about baseball. One is I like that it's every day. I like that my routine can be I come home and I watch baseball. And when the season's over, at first it feels like it's a break. I'm ready for to have some time that's not with baseball. But then it's, when spring training starts getting close, and really after spring training comes, and then we all realize again that's not all that exciting. It feels you feel like you're missing something in your life every day. So I really love that it's every day. I love the history of the game, and that the broadcast gives you time to discuss history. So a hockey broadcast barely has a minute to do analysis, right? I mean, you have to get in one sentence every 30 seconds of play just to, in between all the play-by-play, right? I mean, there's not much you can do there. And I like the stats. I love baseball statistics. Like I said before, it's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And no other game has stats anywhere near as good as baseball and as interesting as baseball that can tell a story the way that baseball does. And so, I think if the stats didn't exist, if I never got into the stats, I think I'd be much less of a baseball fan.
Yeah,
what about you, Paul?
Oh, I've told this story many times. I became a Yankee fan in 1977. The neighbors I had across the street were about, 6, 7, or 8 years older than me, twin Italian guys. This is 1977. But even before then, I looked up to them like from the moment I was a little kid. But, at the same time, Happy Days was on. That was one of the shows I was allowed to watch. And the coolest guy in the world was Fonzie. And these two guys were Fonzie. They were real live Fonzies. And so I worshiped them and idolized them. And they were Yankee fans. And their favorite player was Roy White. And, it just happens I write the Roy White book. But I think that was one reason I started to like baseball and one reason I became a Yankee fan, because why wouldn't I want to be like them? And when Reggie hit those 3 home runs, that was just magic. And at that point, I was hooked forever. Angelo's writing, I know this is Paul's pet peeve. Baseball might be on every day, but with the Yankees, you can't view every game since it's televised. Yes,
it's interesting.
Angelo, you're 100% right. I wrote something about that, like a funny. I don't think I ever published this, but I wrote it to a friend. Like, where are the Yankees tonight? I think they're on. Yes, nope. It's channel 11. Nope. I think they're on Peacock. Nope. It's on Apple TV. Yeah, can't find them there. Oh, it's on Amazon Prime. Nope, they're not there. Maybe it's TBS. Hey, I found the game. You did? Yeah, it's over.
It's interesting because I have a different relationship with this because I've been out of market for so long. And so it's always streaming to me. And I go to my MLB.com app. Most of the time, even if it's on, say, like Amazon, it will just automatically push me over there. And a couple of the streaming services I don't have, like Peacock, I don't have. And so I think we had one game on Peacock this year, and that annoyed me. And occasionally I'd have to flip over to Apple TV Plus, which we also subscribe to. So to me, what I really want is for those last few games that are on cable to go away, because then I can get rid of my cable package, which is enormously expensive. We basically only use it have it now, mostly for my mother-in-law who uses it. But, if I can get rid of that $80 a month for YouTube TV, which is insane, I would love it. But there's still a couple of games on ESPN every year. Luckily some of those games are not going to Fox again. And so hopefully I can get my over the air games. I've been heard rumors that even the Yankees are going to start broadcasting over the air soon because you're actually getting more households these days than you get via cable.
Interesting.
Yeah. One thing we mentioned this last week, but one thing like business story in baseball to keep an eye on is the destruction of cable and baseball. I hate that Major League Baseball is like piecing out its rights to this service, that service. That's terrible. But baseball is going to get hurt by those streaming, by cable TV not being around in a few years, or at least having many fewer people watching it. And I think the Yankees, they'll probably find some way around this, but I worry about a lot of teams and what they're going to do. And I think you're going to see like spending baseball crash as revenues go down. But you never know. Maybe Major League Baseball will sell subscriptions to us. I love my MLB TV subscription. Is the best streaming service I subscribe to. Right, I watch it 162 games a year, close to it, and it's a pretty good service. It's better than like the NHL service, which has a lot more flaws, which is run through ESPN Plus. So I think that the real scandal here is them trying to get you to make you subscribe to 6 different streaming services. I don't really care that I can't find them. And if we didn't already subscribe to them, I don't think I'd be subscribing just for the Yankees. Right now, I subscribe to cable just for the Yankees, and really that means like a couple of games on ESPN every year, a couple of games. The NHL has games on TNT and TBS and stuff like that, and that's a problem. So I don't know. I feel like at some point the baseball is just going to sell me a package where for $200 a year or something I can watch every single game, and that's kind of what I want.
Well, that makes sense. If it was consistent, like that silly example I was just giving you, then at least you could say, all right, because there was a time when I was growing up that the Yankees basically went from being on Channel 11. It wasn't every game, but there was a lot of games. The majority, I'd say, of games were on Channel 11 over the air, network TV. We didn't know, nobody had cable back then. But then like around 1983, 82, cable becomes a real big thing. And the Yankees went to Sports Channel. And like Dave Righetti's no-hitter, I never saw it. It was on Sports Channel. And it wasn't on Channel 11. And for years, if you wanted to get all the Yankee games, you had to subscribe to cable. We didn't have cable at the time, and you had to pay more money for Sports Channel, and that was not going to happen in my household. So you just missed some games, but you knew if they weren't on Channel 11, they'd be on Sports Channel. Then the Yes Network comes, really with the promise, like we're the Yes Network, it's the Yankees channel, you'll never miss a game again. That was sort of the promise, and they were good to that promise for a long, long time. But then, as you say, the last couple of years, you're on Apple and Prime and this and that and the other thing and Peacock and YouTube or whatever. And now you don't even know where to look. You can't even find them. They're also on Fox and TBS and Fox Sports 2 and ESPN and like whatever else. And so you just get frustrated. Like I want to watch the Yankees and I'm angry before I even find them, if I can even find them. So if they then said, tell you what, we're going to make this real simple. A lot of people aren't going to be happy like they did when they were on Sports Channel. We're going to be on MLB TV, whatever it is. And that's it. And it's going to cost you $200 for the season. And then you can see all the games.
I think that's where we're heading to eventually. So one thing baseball is trying to do is they're trying to buy back some of their rights from a lot of these kind of failing regional sports channels. The Yankees, I think, are probably the last one to do that because the Yes just makes them so much money, I think. One thing about Yes, I think the Yes team does an incredible broadcast. I've had to watch a lot of Yankee games on Rangers broadcast, and Astros broadcast, and Cubs and White Sox, Orioles, Washington Nationals back in the day. Those are awful broadcasts. I mean, they're just painful to watch. And I just think that there's like a level of quality there that we get as Yankee fans that a lot of other teams don't. And I think that's why, maybe it's not MLB TV. Maybe it'll be the Yes app that you end up watching things on. My problem right now is I haven't saved any money from any of this. I'm spending more money on all of this than I do because I'm still paying for cable. So as soon as I can cut that cable off, then all of a sudden I don't care nearly as much. I'll subscribe to Peacock for $5 a month for 10 games a year or something like that. That said, this is this is economically a real abusive monopoly that baseball and frankly some other sports teams are dealing with. The NFL will sell off Monday, Thursday, Sunday night football to different places, and it's a bit of a problem.
Except it's consistent. That's the
is
difference.
it? I mean, it's on Amazon. What Monday Night Football is going to be on Google now?
Thursday,
I think.
Well, I don't know about.
Yeah.
All right, maybe you're saying something. I'm saying right this minute in 2023, I think they've given up Thursday Night Football. I think you have to subscribe to somebody else for that. But the Sunday night game is always on NBC. So if I'm going to watch Sunday Night Football, it's on NBC. If I'm going to watch Monday Night Football, I believe it's on ABC. I'm not a big enough football fan, but it's on the same place every time. And even if the Yankees did that, hey, every Sunday, if you want to watch us, we're on Apple TV.
I mean, this is what Google is for, right? I mean, I don't know. Like I've never had, I mean, again, I have a different situation, but like, I could always find it in one Google search. I think, I think the bigger problem is them getting you to pay, for me, is paying for those services.
Well, I don't buy any.
And football is a lot of over-the-air TV still, and at least if you're in market, that's kind of what I would want. I think this is a place for legislation. I think this is a place for policymakers. Where baseball fans are being exploited, and I think that it would be a very reasonable law to say that they have to sell you one subscription where you can watch everything.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great law. Are you running?
No. However, I free political advice. You'll be a very, very popular, politician if you fix the blackout problem for baseball. For me, I have the opposite blackout problem, which is if it's a locally televised game, I can't watch it. So I don't get even my cable package, I don't get Cubs games. So if the Yankees are playing the Cubs, I can't watch it. I think I get White Sox games. So I was able to watch the White Sox games. But when I was living in Austin, I couldn't watch it when they were playing the Astros most of the time. So I think that's another problem. And frankly, baseball wants to be a national sport, right? They want fans from outside of a market to watch their star players play. And I don't think that this is a way to do it. I don't think making it difficult to watch games nationally is a way to create a national game, right? I mean, if you want to market Juan Soto as a star, well, you got to be able to watch him everywhere in the country. If you want Aaron Judge should be on every TV in the country, and it should be easy to watch him because that's how you make baseball fans. And I really think the Yankees have a very short-sighted view of this.
And one reason Mickey Mantle was so huge is the Yankees were always the NBC game of the week, in the 50s and the 60s. And everybody knew Mickey Mantle. That was always the argument. There were some players that you never saw because they were in other smaller markets. But, the game that everybody saw, and then the World Series, of course, you saw Mickey Mantle.
And there's no technological limitation now, right? I mean, it's not like... It's not like we have trouble broadcasting a Cincinnati Reds game to New York. Like we can do it. The technology is there. And so there's really just no excuse for it other than these exclusive rights. If these cable networks die, well, then there's really no downside if Major League Baseball just gets you to subscribe to everything. The NHL sells rights to every team. So I subscribe to ESPN Plus, and as part of that, I get a bunch of other stuff, but I also get every single NHL game, no matter what, unless it's on NHL Network nationally, and then I can't watch it, right? So there's still that little trick right there. As a Devils fan, the Devils have been really good. They've been really exciting. They have the most exciting young player in the league right now named Jack Hughes. Absolutely loving watching their games. But the one consequence is they get picked up for national broadcast more now. So I get blacked out of a lot of games.
Frustrating. Yeah, they have to definitely come up with some way to fix it. I've never understood when you have a product, making it more difficult for your fans to consume that product and taking it away by putting it onto services that people don't have. And I think boxing did that a long time ago. I would love to watch boxing, and I've brought this up on other venues. I don't know how to watch boxing. You have to get Showtime. I don't have it. You have to get HBO. I don't have it. There's nothing over the air. And even if you have HBO and Showtime, when you finally get to the point where there's going to be a big match, well, no, you got to now pay for the pay-per-view, and you're going to have to drop 50, 60, 70 bucks to watch the big heavyweight fight or with a big middleweight championship or something. Like, wait a minute. No, I'm not paying all that money. So the answer is, here's a potential fan of a sport not willing to pay all that money just to try to take part in their money schemes, right? Like, no, I just won't watch boxing. I watch Rocky enough times. I can see the fights when I want, and the guy I want to win always wins, except in the first one. So it all works out good that way. So I don't understand taking something away from the fans.
Yeah, one of the other dumb things that baseball does, and baseball was really the leader in this. The NHL for the longest time lets you make social media clips from NHL games without having to pay a license fee or whatever. I actually don't know if they still do this because I don't see as many anymore. But for a long time, you could see like highlight clips and people doing cool little mashups and all that using NHL clips. And baseball severely polices that. They don't let you. They make it very difficult for you to use their clips. I have you remember this one time when I ran into about the money. I would occasionally get like little takedown notices because we would talk about Major League Baseball and the titles of things. There's a reason why my podcast is called The Bronx Beat and not a Yankees podcast. Why your blog is called Start Spraying the News and not Yankees Daily or whatever. And that's because there's some real risk of being shut down, and that's dumb. Right. This is free publicity, guys. Like this is we're not making we're not costing Major League Baseball lots of money by sitting here talking about how we're Yankee fans. We're promoting.
No, we're generating interest. I mean, we are free advertising. Yes, we are. 100%.
This is what kept me in the game, like talking about the Yankees online, reading stuff online. And I think it's what keeps a lot of listeners and readers in the game.
Baseball also made a rule. I'm not sure if they ever changed it back. I don't think they have. Two things. One, they started telling Little League teams that you couldn't use Major League teams as the names of your teams. I know for certain there was
they changed all their minor league teams too.
And I was going to say that, right? Like, I get it. You want your minor league teams to have the local flavor, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders.
They want to sell jerseys at full price.
Correct. But the Scranton Yankees would generate more interest because I go, oh, that's the Yankee team. These franchises move from this franchise to that franchise. Who's Pittsfield this year? Well, this year Pittsfield's a Mets team. Next year, Pittsfield's a Red Sox team. Like if they were the Pittsfield Red Sox, you'd know that. If they're the Pittsfield
Mets,
I mean,
some of these AAA clubs have been with teams for a very long time, right? The Pawtucket Red Sox,
yes,
were a team for a very, very long time. The Staten Island Yankees, it still kills me that they no longer exist. I agree with you. Like, I think that's part of building the brand, and I don't know what Bean Counters kind of figured out that they had a math problem. But I think they're probably very short-sighted there.
Very short-sighted. And I don't think, like I was saying, Little League teams can use Major League teams' names, which I coached a kid who was a Yankee fan, but then one year his Little League team was the Red Sox.
I was on the Twins one year, yeah.
Then he became a Red Sox fan. I mean, because his Little League team, kids, that's what they do. Well, I was on the Orioles this year. I guess I'll be an Orioles fan. I mean, that's how it works.
It's very short-sighted by Major League Baseball.
Sense.
And like our game isn't dying. Like I think that's overstated, but it's not in great health. And Major League fans are older than fans of other sports. And these are little things you could do that are basically costless that on the margins could help you kind of solve that problem. I worry that, 20 years from now that, the kids won't be watching baseball. I'll tell you, when I mention, I sometimes I'll kind of poke my students a little bit and say, hey, the Yankees are playing the Cubs or whatever. And I very rarely get a reaction. Other sports you do, not baseball.
Mm-hmm. And you don't see in schools, you don't see as many baseball jerseys as you do other sports and baseball T-shirts. And you still see baseball hats, but there are things they could do to really grow the sport. But EJ, we only have like 6 seconds left. So at this point, I'm going to thank you for a great hour. And look at this. See, here's for Angelo Rianna at the very end. My Little League team was the Cubs. I was number 10, and I became a fan of Ron Santo. It's how it works. Baseball's just very foolish in so many ways. I thank everybody for watching. Angelo, thanks for all the comments. Mac, thanks for producing. EJ, thank you. And we'll be back again next